Hello and welcome to another podcast from Odell Technology. Today we're joined by Dr. Mike Rogers, MBE, the Director of Research and Innovation at the MND Association.
So I'm Mike Rogers. I'm the Director of Research and Innovation at the MND Association. I've previously worked at for a long time at the NIHR, the National Institute of Health and Care Research, where I did a variety of roles, including working on the NIHR infrastructure portfolio, so things like the biomedical research centres and the clinical research facilities. I also established a new global health programme, and I was the lead for research funding at the NIHR end during COVID.
When you moved from the National Institute of Health Research into MND Association, what surprised you most about the MND research ecosystem? Was it the urgency from patients, the scientific complexity of the situation, or the translational challenge?
I mean, I think it's all three of those to a degree. I just to take those in turn. I think we don't have disease-modifying treatments for the vast majority of people with MND, but I think there's huge nuance within that. The last 10 or 12 years have seen an explosion in MND research. You can actually see it in a number of publications associated with the disease compared with others. So it's a really exciting time. It feels like a critical time for MND research, and that was a hugely attractive part of coming here. There is obvious urgency from patients and their families, because again, this is a disease with no disease-modifying treatments really for the majority, no effective treatments for the majority, and it's an extremely unpleasant condition, and it can affect people very rapidly. Around 50% of people are dead within 2 years of diagnosis. So it's hugely urgent. I think the main thing that stood out since I started, and this is partly because I joined the NIHR because I was very interested in translational research and I wanted to work on the translational infrastructure portfolio. So that's always something I've been interested in. What's going on with MND and actually quite a few other neurodegenerative conditions, that translational challenge, we talk about these valleys of death for any disease, but it's particularly acute, particularly that early valley of death between discovery and getting things into the clinic is particularly acute for MND. And I think, one of the things that all this is pointing to is new approaches to actually making sure that the discovery science is leading to the opportunity for, at the very least, for patients to get on clinical trials of new agents.
Okay, so for someone outside of the UK charity and the research world, how would you explain how MND Association, or what it actually does? I mean, you are not just a research funder, you support people living with MND, families, carers, researchers, clinicians, policy work, and public awareness.
That's right. We're the main national charity for England, Wales and Northern Ireland. We're the largest MND charity in the UK, and there are three areas which you've alluded to, which we're focused on. A huge part of what we do is support for people with MND, and that takes a range of different forms, from advice to people with MND and their families. We provide support grants to people, so they can go and get technology or access other things that are helpful or important to them to help them. We also fund research, and we've been doing that for a long time. And we've really, I can say this because I'm relatively new. The association has been the engine of a lot of things in the UK related to MND research, particularly early careers, and a lot of that early career ecosystem has been mainly supported by the association over the last 30 odd years. So we're really proud of our role in, I suppose, creating and maintaining an MND research ecosystem in the UK, which is arguably stronger than anywhere else in the world. The third area is actually campaigning. So campaigning is really important to us, and we're a campaigning organisation, again, on behalf of people with and affected by MND.
Okay, so who are the people you're ultimately trying to help? Is it the patient, family, the carer, the clinician, the researcher, or all of these together? I mean, does the association think of impact as treatment discovery only, or also better diagnosis, better care, better services, and better quality of life?
Yeah, it's all of those. It's across the spectrum because it has to be. So yeah, we want to, we ultimately want to play a key role in ensuring that people have access to disease-modifying treatments. But until that point, there's a lot of other things that we can do to improve the lives of people with MND, also their families and carers. I suppose one interesting perspective, we earlier this year we released a new research strategy, a new 5-year research strategy. We spoke to patients and family members as part of that to help us develop elements of that strategy. So it is actually focused on the things they want us to focus on. And when we spoke to patients and carers about what their number one priority was for healthcare research for quality of life, people with MND, which is really, really important in the absence of effective treatments. Their number one thing that they wanted us to focus on was improving the lives of families and carers, funding research into that. That's only a small snippet of what we're going to do, but that's an interesting window into where people think we should be headed. Patients are also very, very keen to understand why they have the disease, which outside of the familial forms is very unclear. So that's a majority of people with MND, but they also want to know why their disease is progressing differently to somebody else that we're talking to on the call, because people's experience of the disease is phenomenally different. So that understanding that and building that hopefully into better diagnosis and prognosis is something that we're really interested in scientifically.
So one phase that I really liked about the strategy is the ambition to make further inroads into understanding MND, how it innovates, the innovative new treatments that are available, and ensure from people that they can take part in clinical trials. So for me, what does that mean practically? I mean, is trial access now becoming as important as scientific discovery itself?
Yes, I'd say. I mean, scientific discovery is always going to be really, really important. Charities tend to want to fund translational research these days, and we're the same. We want to fund that because of the impact. You use the word impact. Charities see that as impact. We still don't know everything about this disease, and if you don't have one of the familial forms, we don't understand what that initiating pathology is. We understand a lot more about the hallmarks of the disease, but those sorts of initiating pathologies are still really, really important to us. But trials access is something that people talk to us about all the time, and the fact that they're not getting access to clinical trials. So we have some fantastic centres doing their best to get people on clinical trials, but we need to get more and more people on there. That benefits everybody. It means that the trials can proceed more quickly. It provides us with a more realistic base of people taking part in clinical trials. So that clinical trial access is really, really important, and we are already funding things and doing things in that space, but we're also thinking of new things to do that we can put in place that will improve that.
So speaking of new things, I mean, the association's research portfolio is now reported around, I think it's 26.9 or 27 million, we'll say, sterling, across 138 projects, I think. And how do you decide what deserves funding? I mean, what makes a project fundable in MND today? Biological plausibility, patient needs, translational pathways, trial feasibility, biomarkers, or all of these?
Yeah, so most of our portfolio is focused on the earlier end, so it's probably taken us up to translational research. And what we will be doing over the next 5 years is probably taking a more directive role in terms of the things that we want to fund. So that will mean things fill in some of these gaps. So it's work to actually understand the disease much better. It's work to understand the individual experience of people with the disease much better. How does that translate in terms of biomarkers? Is a good example. We'd love to generate more biomarkers that can help us improve somebody's prognosis. At the moment, people are given quite a stark prognosis when they're diagnosed with MND. As I say, there's a 50% chance you won't be here in 2 years, but there's a 50% chance that you will. And people are really interested, people with MND are really interested in that difference and want to understand that better. It will also allow them to plan their lives more effectively. So I suppose that's one example. Developing new treatment targets is really, really important. We think there are a number of excellent treatment targets out there. It's just about making them tractable, validating them, and hopefully getting them into the clinic. But we know that there are probably other targets as well that we don't necessarily know much about yet or know about at all that could potentially be transformative.
I think, MND, where time matters so much, and you've illustrated that a number of ways, how early should researchers be thinking about the evidence pathway, the endpoints, the trial design, the patient stratification, I suppose, and the registries, and eventually access?
Yeah, and this is something I think that the community, certainly in the UK, are thinking about very, very carefully. Partly on the basis, I suppose, that MND and neurodegenerative diseases, there's not been a good record of producing treatments. Something different has to happen here. And I think it is bound into many of these things. I think patient stratification is starting to feel very important. We're starting to see in clinical trials as they report that sometimes those results are fairly difficult to interpret. And that is definitely because what you're looking at is a group of people in the trial whose disease is very different. So how do we get into that earlier? And there are a number of things going on now that are looking at things like functional rating scores and how they're used in clinical trials. But again, back to biomarkers, I think biomarkers is going to be really, really important.
Yes.
And different types of biomarkers as well. So different types of biomarker across the different clinical experience. I think they're also going to be really, really important as well. Registries are really important. I think. So we fund the MND register, and we're really proud to fund it. It's a really, really impressive piece of work that's been done out of King's and Oxford. We funded that last year for another 5 years. And the register is actually going great guns. It's getting more and more centres involved. It's getting much, much better sense of what's going on across the country. And it's also now starting to think about how to incorporate that into clinical trials, offering the opportunity to go on clinical trials to people with MND. There aren't a huge number of people with MND, so this sort of thing is doable with this disease. And we're seeing a number of things related to the register that I think are really, really exciting, including inclusion within national data infrastructure as well. So I think we're in quite a good spot in a number of different ways with some of the infrastructure that we're developing. It's about getting the treatments through.
Okay, so why is the patient voice so important in research design?
So I've always been really passionate about patient involvement. I think it's really, really important that what you do in research really does incorporate the patient voice and does that properly from an earlier stage as possible. Trial design and the patient voice within it, I think, are really, really important in MND because that variation of experience of people makes some of these trials very, very challenging to operate. And it does make them challenging in terms of getting in the full range of people with MND. So how you develop some of those strategies is really, really important for this disease. A number of these treatments that are being developed, we're not necessarily talking about a pill or something you can inject at home. They're intrathecally delivered. So that's a spinal tap, a lumbar puncture. Again, that's the case across neurodegenerative disease. This first wave of treatments are probably all going to be intrathecally delivered because getting across the blood-brain barrier of itself is a massive scientific challenge, and there are people working on that. But that initial range, that initial group of treatments in neurodegenerative diseases, I think, are going to be given intrathecally. Again, that presents challenges for patient access to these studies. So how can these trials be best designed to get as wide a range of people with MND involved in them, and also make it as easy as possible for people to participate with a disease that may leave you wheelchair bound, or may mean that you struggle to communicate. That's a really, really important element, I think, of trial design.
I couldn't agree more. I think so over the 5-year project that you've initiated, what does improvement look like at the end of 5 years?
That's a really timely question because we just finished developing our indicators for the next 5 years.
Yes.
So we have a hard set of indicators. The sorts of things that we're talking about are, and some of these are technical, some of them less so. We already have a research nurse network that's been embedded around the country. That will continue to embed, and we'll have nurses in a number of locations. We're investing a lot of money in this. that one's a fairly straightforward one. We want to see more people on clinical trials. We want to see more people with MND taking part in clinical trials. That of itself is really, really important to our community. We want to see, for example, existing biomarkers being validated. It's all very well finding something and saying it's a biomarker. How do you validate those existing biomarkers, as well as discovering new ones and getting those validated? Treatment targets. Where are we now? Where will we be in 5 years? As I've said, we will continue to fund discovery science. What's that discovery science generating in terms of the sorts of targets that are going to be validated and getting into the clinic? 5 years isn't a long time,
No.
but we have indicators that will show us if we're making progress in that area. We want to continue to see innovation and play a key role in that. Technology is something that's really, really important, assistive technology. So we have some indicators around assistive technology, which what we want to do there is a much more flexible, patient-led approach to what technology is and isn't available, and what isn't available, supporting, it might be companies, might be researchers to develop those sorts of assistive technologies that patients themselves have said, we need these. And another key part of it as well as early career research is, again, making sure that we are maintaining that ecosystem that we played such a key role in developing in the first place. So making sure that we continue to get people into MND research, people who are interested in neurodegenerative disease. How do you get them to choose MND research? How do we maintain those numbers through our fellowship schemes and the funding that we offer for PhDs? So that's just a flavour, I suppose, of some of the things that we'll be looking out for in the next 5 years, and we'll play we'll be very strict with ourselves in terms of whether or not we're achieving these things.
I think you've achieved an amazing ecosystem, probably one of the best in the world at this point in time for MND. And I know there's £700,000 or £800,000 being spent on PhD students. I think that's the number I secured from the research. And you've got a lot of very interesting projects going on. I saw recently a really interesting ultrasound device that's used for helping access the blood-brain barrier. It's in France. And that's going to be used obviously in MND in France. And I want to bring that to your attention, so I'll introduce you to that group. No, it's showing better efficacy than intrathecal devices. So I think that was interesting. I think what I take from this conversation is that MND research is no longer just about isolated scientific projects. It is becoming an integrated ecosystem. Patient family, biomarkers, trial design, data clinicians. You've got this fantastic registry, which I think that you've invested well in. I think the regulators and care pathways all need to move together, which is what you're moving towards, and you're collecting a lot of people in your wake. Is that? And I've been a big fan for quite some time now of the work that's been going on there. Is MND the scientific question? It's not simply for me. It's let's just discover something promising. It for me is, can we discover it, validate it, test it, fund it, deliver it, and make it accessible quickly enough? It's got to be quick to matter to people living with these horrible diseases, I should say. Is that the central challenge?
I think it is. Yeah, I think I suppose one of the big questions is, are the regulatory and then the healthcare systems ready for the sorts of therapies that are going to be developed?
Yes.
Because these are going to be advanced therapies, as I've said. Our experience with there's a drug called tofersen, which is an effective drug for 2% of people with MND with the SOD1 mutation. That works, and that's going through the regulatory process at the moment.
Yes.
Our experience with that, and I won't go over that in detail today, but people can read about that if they search Prescribe Life, our Prescribe Life campaign.
Yes.
Actually getting that to people during the early access program has been very, very challenging. So our experience there suggests that the systems aren't quite ready for these sorts of treatments. And as I've said, other drugs are being developed across neurodegeneration, which are going to require complex delivery.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like as a country we're prepared for that. I think, what we're talking about here is relatively rare diseases like MND. There was treatment developed last year for there was news about a treatment last year for Huntington's disease,
Huntington's disease, that's
yeah,
right, yes.
which was this Unicore treatment, phenomenal, which was I think an
Yeah,
AAV,
that's right.
adeno-associated virus. That required brain surgery, so that was a one shot, unlike Tofersen where you go every few months, every month I think. That was a one shot, but using brain surgery. Phenomenally innovative treatment. Looks like it works. Obviously, it needs more development. What happens when something like this is developed for Alzheimer's disease? Very, very common. What happens to the system then? So I think the system, it is a concern that the system isn't necessarily ready for these. And it's, as you say, it's not just about discovering a new target and validating it. It's about modes of delivery. And these are going to be complex for a long time. With anything to do with the central nervous system, these are going to be complex for a long time until more of the mysteries of the blood-brain barrier are uncovered and we can get drugs over it more easily. So I think that's something we're very, very concerned about at the moment, I have to say, in terms of that kind of system readiness to actually get these drugs into people. And as I say, the experience we've had with Tofersen, this has slowed down and potentially halted the disease in a lot of people who've taken it, and we know people and have seen the effect in them. We want to see that for everybody with MND, and we need to be sure that the regulatory system and then the healthcare system that's delivering these new drugs is ready to deal with it.
Tell me about patient-reported outcomes. What are you doing with PROs?
So PROs is a really, really interesting piece of work being done by Carolyn Young at the moment.
Yes.
I'm
a big fan.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan.
And I think that piece of work that Professor Young's doing is really, really critical. I mentioned them yet, but I should have talked about the MND Research Institute, which we're a co-funder of, which is a collaborative of scientists and clinics around the country getting together to solve some of these problems. They've done some phenomenal work in innovative models, for example. Yes. But having this institute there, this virtual institute across the country, is really, really critical. And you can see how important that is with Carolyn's work, and also with the Chris McDermott in Sheffield has done the telemedicine work, both in terms of care, but also in terms of research as well. So make it easier for people to get involved with clinical trials. And I think PROMS work, we've seen the impact of PROMS in other diseases, MS being a big one. Yes. So there's been a big international PROMS initiative there. And I think the other thing I should say is patients are desperate to get involved in initiatives like this. Not for now, they see the benefit for the future. And that selflessness is a real feature of the MND community, actually. People want to be on clinical trials and understand that the clinical trial may not benefit them, but they know it will benefit somebody in the future, and that's the main reason why people want to get on clinical trials. And it's a very, very well informed community, and I think initiatives like Carolyn's with the patient reported outcomes will be a massive success.
I think it'll change the game. Actually, I really do. I think she's a game changer, and so are you. So no, it's like old men planting trees. That's really how I see it. It is. It's going to change. It's going to change the outcomes for a lot of people. I have faith that the regulators will come good. I just think it's a very complex problem, a very complicated problem. But I think the measures that you're undertaking right now are very beneficial to a lot of people. So talk about the organisation's values.
So our vision is to have a world free from MND, and our values are really, really important to us. We have 4 values. We're one strong team. We make every day count. We think big, and we are determined. And I think it's important to view this not just through necessarily the prism of people at work, but this is about a patient association. This is about an organisation that isn't just about the people who work in the office. Our volunteers are absolutely pivotal to what we do. Our volunteers and members. We have thousands of people around the country helping us deliver what we do. And as the main patient association in the UK, these values are really, really critical to us and the work that we do. And our hope is that these are getting through to the community and everything that we do.
All right. Well, I want to congratulate you on your efforts. I think what you've done has changed the lives of many people, and I hope we can meet again in 6-7 months, and also talk to some of your colleagues through this conduit. And this will be shared with many people, So I hope that we can bring a small message, this huge message, to many people. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Stephen. Great.